Hi everyone, it's Chelsea here, bringing you another segment of Living in Southwest Florida. If you're thinking about moving to Fort Myers, Cape Coral, or any of the surrounding areas, then you may have heard a lot about the changes within the insurance industry here in Florida. This week I sat down with Blake Chapman from State Insurance for a quick tutorial on how insurances will work. But before we jump in really quickly, it would mean a lot to me if you could go ahead and hit that like button so that the YouTube algorithms share this information with others and it lets me know what you'd like more of. And as a thank you, here's some footage of me horseback riding through Prairie Pines Preserves in North Fort Myers. If you've watched other videos, you may have heard me talk about my love of riding. This is a form of my self-care, and so I'm here on my own unicorn. But if you are a vacationer looking to trail ride, White Horse Farms has a great weekend trail riding program to check out. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't remind you how much I love helping people from all over the country buy and sell their homes here in Southwest Florida. So if you or anyone you know of are even thinking about moving, then feel free to use that contact information below. All right, let's jump right in. How are you today?
Great.
Good, good. Thank you for doing this for me.
Oh,
Um,
do
I
it.
really appreciate it. So thank you very much for joining me. For those that I've just let in, this is Blake Chapman. He is, well, actually, why don't you talk about your role with State?
Sure, sure. So Blake Chapman, I'm the owner agent at State Insurance USA. So we're basically an insurance marketplace is what we call it. That's our fancy term, but a local independent insurance in Southwest Florida. We've got an office in Estero, Florida. We had one in Fort Myers Beach that we look to open back up here shortly, and also one in Fort Myers, too, actually, a commercial office as well, right next door to our Fort Myers location. So, well versed in what's happening in the property insurance market in Florida. Been an agent for 15 years, and the agency is 10 years old.
Very cool. Thank you. Well, I know I am fielding questions left and right about the changes that we've been seeing in insurance here, especially after the hurricane. So I thought it would be best to kind of go to a source and hear from you what's been going on. So do you mind sharing with everybody what are some changes that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. There's several. There's been a lot actually prior to. I think a lot of the industry changes go back prior to Hurricane Ian and kind of stem out of Hurricane Irma, which was the 5-year anniversary was right before Hurricane Ian. And after Hurricane Irma, there became a lot of just litigation problems inside the industry, and just statutes and things that needed some changes. And up until recently, we weren't able to get those changes. December, actually, they did some updates to the actual Florida laws, and legislator came together because we had about 10 insolvent insurance companies in the last 18 months. So that challenged the market anytime you're going to have insolvencies like that, along with probably the biggest hurricane to hit Southwest Florida, Hurricane Ian. So we were already in I guess trouble. I don't know if trouble's a word, but trying times, and was already kind of uncharted territories when it came to Florida property insurance, specifically home insurance. And Ian just put a magnifying glass on that and really showed those things. And what are those? So a list of them was the litigation costs were. So in Florida, we were extremely on any claim that was turned in, 78% of the lawsuits on like a home insurance claim were in Florida. And so that was really driving up the cost of our rates. And that was even pre Ian. So you add that in with the catastrophe like Ian, and that's what's going to raise reinsurance costs as well. And so, there's where's the future? So, I heard this and I think it was great advice. We've had really 5 years of back-to-back storms, which have really challenged the market from being able to have capacity is probably the challenge. And then underwriting is extremely stringent. So those things are getting a little bit better now, but it's going to take some time. We need more competition. That's what really will help drive down rate. And we look to see that in the I believe in the near future, 18 and 24 months, somewhere in that realm. So things are kind of moving in the direction, but that's kind of, I guess, a real high level view of what's happening in the industry. How's that affecting everyday consumers? Rates have increased over the last 3 years or whatnot, but there's still options out there. We're still writing for brand new homeowners every day. What's really the things that position homeowners to be able to get affordable insurance or insurance that be eligible for it. Hurricane mitigation features are bigger than ever before. So sometimes the newer homes, anything within the last 10 years is really, really good, or something that's been heavily mitigated with a recent update to a roof or hurricane protection to the home. Nailing patterns to the roof that's done at a re-roof can really help and position a homeowner to actually get a really good option on their insurance, even in these limited capacity days. And then the last thing is probably the 4-point inspection. That's an eligibility inspection. Those are really just kind of good things that I'm working on one right now, and so that's an overview of the roof, the plumbing, the electrical, and the AC. And so just kind of knowing the status of those on a home can be really, really helpful. And then kind of debunk, some of the myths that are out there. Flood insurance is still available through the National Flood Insurance Program. It has challenged. We were about 5 years ago, there was a lot of private flood options that came out. They're still in some areas, just not our high risk zones that are out on the islands and the coastal areas. But that's kind of the one thing I hear a lot. Can I get flood insurance on a home that had past flooding? You can. Absolutely can. And so that's something that's a myth that's kind of floating around that I try to debunk that. We would have an option for flood insurance, or whatnot. So that's probably the other thing that's been challenged is a lot of homeowners policies do not include flood insurance. 99% of them do not, and you have to purchase a separate flood policy. And Hurricane Ian really shined a light on flood and more than ever before. And so a lot of carrier requirements are requiring flood if they're in a flood zone, even if they do or do not have a mortgage. So so industry was definitely buckling a little bit, but I think the recent changes are helping. There's been some fresh capital into the industry, but things will get better over the next 18 to 24 months. It's just you really need somebody right now. Really need a true advisor, true professionals to help you navigate through this. But it's still you can get it done, and it shouldn't be as challenging is it's often reported. But those things are important. The updates, I think, would be fair to say are important when going to purchase home insurance or flood insurance or any of those things.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, so I want to dive deeper on a couple of those things.
Yeah.
You were talking about 4-point mitigation, and I want to point out that, or the 4 points, in wind mitigation reports, 2 separate reports. They both are typically done during the inspection period. And then once the inspector does it, we can hand them over to insurance so that they can kind of adjust. And those will basically show off where some deductions may be found, right? Like if the hot water heater is newer, then that's going to reduce the policy a little bit. If the roof is newer, that's going to reduce the policy a little bit, right?
Yeah, so the updated roofs actually can really help out a whole lot. So the wind mitigation is more the one that gives the discounts. So it's always a good thing to have done. The 4 points more for eligibility. So there's not a lot of specific discounts given, but it could make you eligible for a carrier that might have a little bit more stringent underwriting guidelines. So and I guess foresight, you could be getting a discount for updating that water heater, because you could become eligible for another company that has a better rate, better coverage, or things of that nature. So, but yeah, those are vital to the industry. At about 20 years is when a 4-point is needed. Not every carrier requires it at that, but that's when I would suggest to have them. Or if there's any updates, that's probably a good place to list the updates, even if the home's even a little bit newer than that. And then the wind mitigation inspection. So those credits, a lot of carriers automatically give them on a home that's 2002 and newer. But it's still a good thing to have updated here recently, because of hurricane protection that might have been added to the home since then. And there might be a more recent roof. There's a lot of roofs in Southwest Florida that were originally built in 2002, and they have been updated. So there's definitely some additional credits. So I would get the wind mitigation on it on any age, other than something probably that doesn't have a roof
Right.
update. Probably be a good rule of thumb on that. But yeah, great inspections really help any insurance agency. All carriers have to give credits for those things. Almost all carriers use that as an underwriting guide to go off of. And it's just a quick look of the home, and helps them make an underwriting decision, or whatnot. So yeah, those can be helpful.
Sounds good. And I know too, like, I'd get a lot of questions before Ian about, whether or not a roof would be insurable after 20 years. And I would say I'm probably feeling those questions a little bit less right now, because we did have so many roofs damaged that a lot of those are being replaced now. Not 20-year-old roofs out there anymore.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out too that you can get insurance with a older roof as long as it's been checked by a roofer, or at 4-point, or when like an inspection has been done on it and certified that it's in good shape, right?
Yeah. So if there's remaining useful life. So one of the carriers, it's just Citizens, that will write a lot of the older roofs, or whatnot. As long as it has 3 years remaining useful life and there's not any like damage to it, it's eligible for them. So you could go a little bit older. I believe they'll go to 25 years on a shingle, but it's got to be pretty good shape, or at least that 3 years. And then the other thing, just to kind of be proactive about, they would eventually kind of set it up for non-renewal, so one would need to be done in the future, or whatnot. Now there is other carriers that do offer, older roofs, but they'll insure them at like what the actual cash value is, so it's the depreciated amount on that roof. And so, it's kind of like just good home ownership. I mean, if you have a 20-year-old shingle and the life of it was 20 to 25 years, and it's going to need to be updated. So there'll be like, in the event there was a loss, there would be a limited payout when there's that provision in there. But it is eligible. It is something that, hey, we're looking at getting a new roof in the next year or two. Maybe that's an option for someone that was already preparing to do it, or whatnot. So yeah, and then if there's a roof that's going on fairly recently after a closing, we're starting to see a little bit of flexibility again on that. And in the event they have like a roof contract for, the roof was 20 years old, it's being replaced, it's going to be done in the next 30 to 60 days. With that roof contract and some type of down payment, or a completion date that estimated, we usually can get underwriting approval on that, or whatnot. So that can be sometimes a reluctance too, if it's here's a home, we'd love to purchase a home, but there's some roof damage, needs to be updated, and we can't get it done for the next 60 days. So it's still out there. There's a lot of areas in Southwest Florida that are still trying to get those roofs updated, and there's just a limited amount of capacity of roofers, and so that really challenges it. And so carriers are making exceptions on some of those for sure.
How many carriers are you seeing in the state right now? Are there very many?
Very limited for right now. I mean, there's still carriers that are actively writing renewal policies and things of that nature, but As far as actively writing new home policies, it's probably in the network of around 10, give or take somewhere in there. Depending on the ages of some things like roofs and whatnot, that might dwindle that down to, 5 or 6. But yeah, a little bit limited at the moment, and but that will probably get better here in the near future. We still have a couple carriers in our area down here in Southwest Florida that are still haven't opened back up since Hurricane Ian. So hopefully that will happen in the near couple of months or whatnot. So.
I want to talk a few minutes too about Citizens, because that is such a massive carrier at the moment, and one with a lot more flexibility. Can you kind of give some people insight about what Citizens is and kind of how it works?
Yeah, so Citizens at the end of the day is a created by the Florida legislature. So it's a state-backed insurance carrier, and but they are taking on a bulk of the policies at the moment, helping out with any type of insolvencies and things of that nature. And there's just limited things that you can't get through them. Like I'll give you an example. Like screen enclosure coverage, they don't offer that, and limited liability. They have a challenge whenever like a home's in an LLC to be able to include liability, so that can challenge it a little bit as well. And they're constantly trying to, as far as there's other admitted carriers in the state, and they're trying to move policies to better options that are available, and they do that through their takeout program or their depopulation program. And so sometimes it's a good place to start just because of the limited capacity, and then once it gets taken out from another company, I think we'll see a lot of that for the next year. Not that takeout over down the road. But yeah, they're created to help in probably these trying times that we're in right now, in the Florida home and condo insurance marketplace. And but they have taken on a lot of policies recently. As far as one of the things that they're not going to do anything like all our customers quite well, with Hurricane Ian. So, and so that's kind of I would say a plus, but it is something that when you sign up for a policy, in the paper it's written on is the most important thing on that, sure. So, but yeah, it's definitely, you don't want it to be your carrier of first resort. You want it to be your carrier of last resort. And it's going to take us a little bit of time to get back to that, but it dwindled down. Don't hold me to these numbers, but it was around a healthy probably 300 to 400,000 policies, and now it's a million on its way to 1.2 million in policy count in the state of Florida. So it's grown substantially. Have the ability to tax the citizens of Florida to help pay claims and things of that nature. So we really don't want to use that as, like I said, it shouldn't be our first option, not our first option, but it might be our only option on some things. And there is also that depopulation or takeout that I was talking about, that down the road, another private carrier will take policies out of there. And yeah, was there any other like specific questions with Citizens, as far as coverage? It's good coverage other than a couple of the limitations that you really need to know about. And then some of the challenges with requiring flood insurance. If you're in a flood zone, so if there's a mortgage that had already been required, but they're going to require full contents coverage, whatever the policy, the homeowners policy or the wind policy has. They're going to require the matching limits. That's something unheard of for them. In the past, you used to sign a waiver, and but so that's another challenge with them. That's starting April 1st, and on all renewal policies starting July 1st. So they'll be sending out, if you don't have proper flood insurance, they'll be sending out a non-renewal notice. So you have to get proper flood insurance. And then that might be a time to look for a carrier that might not require the same flood requirements that they are.
And that was actually
But yeah, that's kind
one of
of
my questions for you, because I know like there's been a lot of talk about Citizens requiring flood lately.
yeah, yeah, and again, that's unprecedented for that. I think the reality is because of the amount of flood claims that they saw from Hurricane Ian. And it's something that most private carriers have to require that there's a flood policy in place so that they can get proper reinsurance on those like island properties and things. So that's kind of why Citizens is moving in that direction as well. Um, yeah, or whatnot. It opens companies up to a lot of
No,
litigation
there
and
you
just
go.
challenging a flood and a wind claim. Did I lose you?
My connection is starting to get a little spotty, so I'm hoping some of this is coming through. But I've been hearing a lot of talk about Citizens requiring flood on all policies, whether they're in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. Can you shed some light onto that?
Yeah, so if it's in a special flood hazard area is where it's going to be required. So if it's still in an X zone, it's not going to be required. But if it is in a AE zone, AH zone, A zone, anything that would be considered a special flood hazard area is where the requirement's going to come into play. X zones, as far as I know, is not a requirement yet. That's going to be more you'd be shocked. There's definitely, I was looking at a property that was inland, 80 miles probably off the coast, and or at least 40, 50, let's put it that way. And it's in an A flood zone, so it would require flood insurance if it was with Citizens. So it's not just the beachfront properties that you would always think of. There's a lot of inside counties, or not counties, but cities that will have a lot of flood zones that will require it as well. So yeah, it will be a major challenge.
Yeah. With the Citizens carrier too, I believe they were one of the only ones that were writing policies right after the storm. Like they opened up first to write again once the storm ended. So I want to where I'm going with this is about open claims, because was Citizens was writing on open claims, right?
Yes, yes, they will. They just need some clarification on what's open, why is it open,
Mhm.
what's the damage, and they'll make case by case underwriting decisions based on that. But yeah, they will. They don't. The other thing they don't do is they don't. If a prior owner had an open claim, they don't look back to the other owner or the other owner's claims when making underwriting decisions. The big kicker here is the existing damage is the challenge. So if the home still has existing damage, that's where it's going to be a challenge from an underwriting perspective, because that's an underwriting question. Hey, does the home have existing damage? And then underwriting is going to have a discussion with the agent on those things. But there's some where they're still just waiting for a final payment. They already got it updated, or it's something minor that's not really a major issue. And so yeah, but some companies do look back into the claims history on the property itself, and so it doesn't matter the name insured at the time, and that can be very challenging. But yeah, they do. They're going to be one of the ones. There's a carrier that's actually going into receivership, and they're going to be one of the ones that's going to help a lot of customers that have an open claim actually find coverage. And so that's kind of what in my opinion, that's what they're there for, and they're more designed for. Um, they shouldn't be our everyday writer of policies by no means, but they should be there in the event to help Floridians at the time of need, finding and placing coverage if they can't find it, which that's one of the most challenging times is you're in the middle of a claim, and Yeah, it can be nearly impossible in some instances if there's existing damage. Now, I'll give you a quick example. Like we've had several customers where the home was destroyed or quite close to being destroyed from Hurricane Ian, and they had to purchase another home, or they were able to purchase another home, and they have an open claim. They had existing damage on that other residence, and we were able to get underwriting exceptions for that type of existing damage on the prior home or fine. And that can sometimes be challenging too, because your claims history from one property to another as an insured does follow you. And almost all companies run what's called a clue report, kind of like auto insurance. They're like, hey, do you have any accidents? Do you have any tickets? No, no. Oh, well, there was one 3 or 4 years ago. That's what home carriers do a lot of. And so I just saw one actually on a property I was working on, and it was from a prior owner. So there's a lot of discovery that's still kind of done on those, and clarification that's needed sometimes to underwriting. So if you know about any of that stuff, going into a transaction or a home purchase or selling a home, that's probably when that discovery can be helpful. Um, or whatnot to help whoever's going to be placing insurance on that home, whether it's a buyer or seller.
Mhm. Yeah, I wanted to discuss that because there are people who are still waiting for roofs, and a lot of them are now getting finished. We've got a good bulk of roofs done at this point, but there's still many more waiting. And if you're waiting for that roof and it's an open claim, it's still worth a discussion to see if you can get insurance because a lot of people, I think, assume that all the work has to be done before they can get a property insured, move forward again. That might not necessarily be the case.
Now, all the facts can help, and then that's the thing that can help really just take that. We can take that to underwriting, or any agent can, and discuss that. So, and like I said, I've seen a couple things even this week. I mean, today's what's the fifth month since Hurricane Ian, right? So things are getting a little bit. You ask that 5 weeks out, they're going to be like, no, right? No, we're not taking anything that's got a roof issue, a roof related issue. But it's understood now that it's in the process, and the documentation and just some clarity on that, just giving underwriting and the company a just information so it doesn't propose an opportunity for an additional claim or troubled property. Let's put it that way. That's really what they're trying. What risk is it to them? That's kind of what they're looking at.
Right.
And there's some ways to give them assurances on that, and that's what we try to do from the agency side and from the consumer side.
Um, Kind of switching gears here, I hear a lot of people kind of wondering because they were hearing about insurance policies going up. What and I don't want to put you on the spot for a specific number, but like, what do you think the average homeowner can expect as a range for insurance costs here?
Yeah, so I mean, if the home just depends on, like, there's a lot of
Always
factors that
depends on
go
the
into that,
home.
right?
Right,
Well,
absolutely.
well, let's probably stick closer to the everyday, like that maybe 4 to 500 range, or or the medium price. I would say a home that's 0 to 10 years, they're probably in probably the 1,500 range, somewhere in there, give or take, for home insurance these days. If the home's within the last 10 years, if it's been mitigated and things of that nature and it's older, a range in that same kind of dwelling coverage, I'd say it's probably anywhere from around 3,000, 3,500, somewhere in there is what we're probably seeing. Give or take, depends on where it's at, location,
Mhm.
all those specifics, construction type really factor into it. Does it have an updated roof? And but yeah, I mean, that's probably a good range if you're non-coastal. When I say non-coastal, not on a barrier island, in that range. But that's probably what the average of what we're seeing these days. And it is real. Like I was just talking to a customer, and where they're seeing, they bought a home I think 3 years ago, and they were like, hey, it started at 1,300. went to 1,700 the next year, and I just got my rental and it's at 3,000. Like, and I got a 2019 roof, and some of those areas were underpriced for what they were really insuring based on everything that's been happening in the industry, but just a lack of competition. Carriers coming back and writing where, there is markets available rating wise. If they were open, that would be probably more in the 2,000 to 2,500 range. So that's probably where that house really should be, but it's just limited markets right now. And that's what most people are seeing. Probably a double, in rates since 3 years ago. That would probably be, but rates were definitely a lot lower back in 2020. And that's really when they started to increase the most.
Yeah, I would say that's probably pretty on par with what I've seen. I've seen new construction being quoted somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000, and then up to the highest policy that's crossed my desk actually crossed this morning at 4 grand for an older home. That, I mean, it's an older home, right? It's got some
Yeah.
work. So that sounds pretty on par with what I've been seeing. What would you say, and this is going to be my last question. If anybody has any questions that's watching, if they want to drop it into the chat, I'll make sure to ask it. But any key differences between here and other states? Like, Florida is very different than other parts of the country in a lot of aspects, and I'm sure insurance is no different. So
Yeah. Hey, that's a great question. I would say the key difference is look where Florida is located. It's a peninsula on the tail end of the United States. That's probably the biggest. So we're a tropical climate. We have hurricanes, we have tornadoes, and we'll continue to have those or whatnot. And so, I think just knowing that that's there, but also knowing that there is insurance policies available. The things that do matter, most of Florida's in a flood zone. If it's in a preferred flood zone, an X zone is what we call it, kind of a deceiving term. Flood insurance is vitally important. I mean, there's people that thought, hey, I'd never see more than 3 feet of water in the home, and they saw 12. And so flood insurance is really, really important in Florida. A lot of areas it's going to be required. And our construction techniques are paying off. I would say a lot of things in Florida are a lot more expensive. The windows, the doors, than most states, but they are paying off. If you go down the coastal properties, you will see. I was in a home that was in 2010 built on Fort Myers Beach, and just some roof damage. And it had extensive flooding, but that's helpful. So the new construction stuff is really making a difference. Those codes are making a difference over the last 20 years. So that's good. The other thing, just kind of be aware that we're unique with the underwriting requirements that we required are kind of challenging sometimes, coming from another state where there might be 30 different options, and they're all advertising for it down here, and we still have the commercials, but it's not that easy. And you need to deal with an agency or an agent that knows the market and kind of help navigate through that. It's more important than probably being in another state. Updates are important, and those inspections are definitely help. And I mean, and we're a growing state. So, I'd say, I can speak to the auto side of it. Sometimes our rates on auto insurance are a little bit higher, but if you see our roads, you'll know why, or whatnot. But it is a price to live in paradise. And, I think you just have to work with the right people. And I think you'll find the best options. And that's key.
that's a good point out too with auto insurance. I know we were talking about homeowners on this one, but when it was one of my surprises, because when I had come from a major city. I had grown up here and I moved back from a major city, and I expected that to go down leaving the big city, and it went up $50. And I was like, wait a second, what?
Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild, yeah. So that's probably a shell shock. I mean, and our home rates too, and then the requirement of flood. But yeah, it's just different, and uh, deductibles are different. The hurricane deductible, limitations. Like in a lot of other states, they don't have all the limitations. Like, what do you mean my screen enclosure is not covered, or whatnot. So those are
A
the
lot of people
things.
found that out the hard way too. My father-in-law found that out the hard way. He thought his was covered.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's a cost to insure those things. I guess would probably be, if you can find that availability. So it is just different. It's not really comparable to another state, but yeah,
And read
that's
those policies, right? Make sure you know what's being covered and what isn't being covered.
yeah, that's probably the better question to ask. I mean, and I would say I'm guilty as an agent sometimes. We're quick to tell them what's covered, and it's like they should be asking the other question of like what's not covered, what's excluded. I mean, is my fence covered or not for hurricane or whatever? And so
Right.
it's probably ask it the reverse. Most people say, "What am I getting for this?" Ask, "What am I not getting?" And that would probably serve you well, for sure.
That's a good piece of advice. We do have a question in the chat. Timeframes on having that 4-point inspection done as it regards to putting in a home under contract. To confirm there are carriers that would insure a home that is down to the studs due to hurricane damage. We would need to get a loan, so can't close without insurance for those big rehab homes. I don't think that there are carriers that are doing down to the studs, is there?
There's not, I mean, not that I know of. I mean, there's very limited, again, options on that. If it's drywall, and it's not coastal, we probably have a builder's risk option. But if it's still damaged, and not in the rehab stage, so again, it's one of those things of like, what's the actual stage? And I hate to go into any of the underwriting on it, but a case by case basis on those. But yeah, if like the drywall's back in, you can typically get what's called a builder's risk policy. And yeah, going to be challenging if it's on the coast, though, for the wind exposure and hurricane coverage. A lot of those don't include it if it's too close to the coast.
Well, there are some homes like in Cape Coral. I sold a dry lot home just north of Cape Coral Boulevard that did flood a little bit. It had finished all of its like remediation and everything, but it just needed the drywall and the flooring and the cabinetry put back in. So would something like that be covered, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. If non-coastal, even though Cape's a coastal area, I'm saying more on the barrier islands or real close to the coast. Yeah, something like that we would have an option for. Absolutely, Cape. Yeah, that's in that phase. Yeah, we could do a property policy on that. Absolutely.
Cool. And then in regards to the time frame on the 4-point inspection, I could probably answer that. You put a home under contract first, and during the inspection period, which is a negotiable period, but typically 15 days is the standardized in the contract. Because it's negotiable, we often see that shortened, sometimes as low as 7 days, oftentimes between 10 and 12. You have that inspection period to run those inspections, and the 4-point inspection would be done then. So, and then we get it over to you guys, and you guys do your thing and give us quotes and tell us what can be done, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. As soon as time frame, as soon as we can get them, put it that way, then we can
Right.
do our thing from the insurance agency. Let you know if there's anything that looks problematic. What's the simple ways to work through it? And yeah, that's kind of where we come into play.
Sounds good. Do you have any last parting words of advice?
Parting words of advice. Insurance policies, they're only as good as a piece of paper that they're written on. So, and when you find that out, that's what I always go around saying, like, hey, it's just a piece of paper until you need it. So know what it's all about, know what you're purchasing. That's the best advice, or whatnot. I had a crazy thing, the insurance stuff, that's no challenge, right? At home, I got 5 young kids, so that's what keeps me on my toes for sure. Insurance troubles, those are easy. We work through those and simple fixes. So, but yeah, would love to help out. And reach out to me again, Blake Chapman with State Insurance USA, and I'd love to help out on anything.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to drop in your information. You and Josh are my go-to guys over there at State. Always helpful, and your quotes always come in better than anybody else's, so I highly recommend you.
There it is. Better than all the rest, right? I hear you. We're going to use that as our tagline, Chelsea, for sure. So better
Well,
than the
thank you
rest.
very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's been fun. Take care.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Thank you. You too.
I hope that was useful for you. As I mentioned, Blake's information is below in the comments if you have any specific questions for him. At the same time, if you have questions about the data, or if you'd like to drill down and compare specific neighborhoods like, say, Cape Coral versus Fort Myers, or waterfront homes or pool homes, or whatever the specific circumstances call for, then feel free to reach out to the contact info below in the description. Myself and the network of agents I have on hand throughout the United States are here, and we're ready to help you with your move. My video schedule can sometimes be erratic, so if you'd like more videos like this, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified when we drop another one. If you are ready to go ahead and get that ball rolling on your move to Southwest Florida, then there is a link in the description below to go ahead and set up that personalized home search that'll be tailored specifically to you. Oftentimes when we search on web aggregates, it limits our capabilities. But when I build out a search for you, you'll have many more options available, and we'll really be able to drill down and have a conversation about what your home in Florida will look like. Or feel free to use Cape Coral Fort Myers realestate.com for all the latest listings to hit the market and begin getting comfortable with what our marketplace looks like. There's no obligations. And don't forget to add me on social media and follow along as we post weekly articles and information that you may find handy and give you an insight into what life in Florida looks like. As always, we really appreciate it when you leave us a comment and hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bells so you can be notified when we drop future videos that may help you with living in Southwest Florida. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I wish you much health and happiness.